Hey guys, and thank you for joining me for another show and tell video. I know you guys kind of like these game hauls, so I'm pretty excited to show off what I have this evening, as it is for a console that is very near and dear to my heart. But first, I thought I'd show you this very neat controller that I picked up for the Nintendo 64. It's called the Retro Fritters Brawler 64, and you'll notice it's very similar to a Switch Pro controller. I loved the Nintendo 64 when I was growing up, but if there was one thing that I really couldn't stand, it was the controller and just how sore the joystick would make my thumbs. So when I saw that they have a custom controller made for the Nintendo 64, the real console, and it looked like a controller that I already loved in the Switch Pro controller, I was very excited to pick one up, and it was super affordable. It's like $40 or something, and it's just very well made, and this control stick is leagues better. It doesn't have the annoying ridges that the 64 controller has. It's very smooth, it's very big, and it's a delight to play with. I highly recommend, if you play your Nintendo 64 or you want to get back into it, picking up one or two of these bad boys. They are just, it's like I'm going to try my hardest to never go back to the original controller if I can help it. Unfortunately, if I want to play Pokemon on the 64, I have to use the original controller, as it does support save and rumble packs, I believe, but not the controller pack that you need for the Game Boy games. But yeah, so I've been enjoying some 64 games with my new controller in 2020. But enough about the controller. I had a very modest collection of 64 games growing up. I had all the big hitters. I had Mario Party, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, Banjo Kazooie, Mario Party, Mario Kart, Mario 64. But for years I'd had dreams about finding and purchasing particular other Nintendo 64 games at antique stores and secondhand stores, and they haunted me, they haunted my dreams. So toward the end of last year, I decided to once again pick up my game collecting and ordered a handful of Nintendo 64 games that I handpicked to add to my collection. So there will be some games you would have heard of, and there might be some ones that you are not so familiar with, but that I think are quite neat. So to start things off, I got a lovely copy of Paper Mario 64. This is quite a rare item, quite expensive, but apparently one of the best Nintendo 64 games that you can get. I remember I was at a hotel in America one time, and they had one of those pay-to-play Nintendo 64s, and I paid for an hour, and my choices were between Paper Mario and Pokemon Snap and a bunch of other ones. And I picked Pokemon Snap, so I never actually got to play this myself until I got this cartridge. But yeah, this was like the main one that I always wanted, and now I have it, and I've played about 2 hours of it, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good fun. I always was really into the Paper Mario franchise, but heard that this and Thousand Year Door were the best. My particular favourite so far is actually Super Paper Mario on the Nintendo Wii. Yeah, so in Paper Mario, if you're not familiar with it, you play as Mario, and you're 2D, you're made out of paper, but you're in a 3D world, and it's a big RPG, so turn-based battles and all that kind of thing. And your goal is, of course, to save Princess Peach, I think. I actually can't remember. I've been playing a lot of games lately. But yeah, it's very cute. It's very fun. The graphics look very nice, and I'm very impressed with Paper Mario 64. The next game is also one that you're probably familiar with. It is Banjo Tooie. Now, I always really enjoyed Banjo Kazooie. I thought it was probably, I would honestly rate it as my favourite 3D platformer on the 64 above Mario 64. Just because the world was so much different, and maybe I played Mario 64 too much. But I always knew that Banjo Tooie was rare and therefore very expensive, so I was never really that keen on getting it. I'd seen someone play through Banjo Tooie, and it looked a little too different to me versus Banjo Kazooie. So yeah, kind of wasn't going to get it. And then I found at Cash Converters, which is probably Australia's leading second-hand store, they had a mislabeled copy of Banjo Tooie. So if I was actually searching for it on their website, I wouldn't have found it because they misspelled it. And they had it for less than half of the price that I had ever seen it on eBay or secondhand game websites. And I was like, listen, I didn't really want this game for those prices, but for less than half price, absolutely, I'll get Banjo Tooie to add to my collection. So I haven't actually played any of Banjo Tooie yet. I've made sure all these cartridges work, and that's about it for some of them. But yeah, it does in fact work. Probably gonna play this last out of these ones that I've got, just because I know that they're super long games, and I do like 100% completing my games, and that'll take me a year or so in Banjo Tooie. And I want to play these other ones first. But I was really excited to get a really nice, mostly clean copy for that price. It's very cool. So those two you're probably familiar with. Let's hit up something that might not be in everyone's collection. Let me introduce you to Glover 64, or just Glover. So you might recognize this character as the hamburger helper, I think, from like Burger King or McDonald's. If you're an American, we didn't really have this character in Australia, and I never really heard of this game until I was doing some research on what are some of the more interesting 64 games, what are the hidden gems of the 64. And this YouTuber called Nitro Rad, who has quickly become one of my favourite YouTubers, does videos on all these obscure games for like old consoles and new consoles alike. And he did this video on Glover. And after I watched it, I was like, okay, I want this game, warts and all. It is not a very highly rated game or highly sought after, so therefore it's pretty cheap. But basically, in Glover, you play as Glover, and in each level, your goal is to get the balls and collect them and move them back to a goal in each level. So your movesets as Glover is to walk around like a hand, like Master Hand. I believe you have like a slam attack and that kind of thing, and you can jump, but you can't jump very well until you get the ball, after which your moveset changes and you become basically the ball and Glover. So to move, now you bounce the ball, and to jump, now you like bounce the ball. And like you roll the ball like to go around ramps and that kind of thing. And I believe you can transform the ball into like a crystal ball which does damage or something, or a bowling ball which does damage and changes how the physics work. And there's some reason to change it into a crystal ball, but if the ball breaks, then you have to go retrieve it from where it was again. And yeah, apparently it's pretty, not glitchy, just a bit clunky, as a lot of 64 games were. But I think it's very charming, and I'm actually really keen to play it, because I don't know, it's different to your standard Banjo Kazooie, Super Mario 64, you know. And yeah, got this from Cashies as well. It's in a little bit of a dirtier condition, but it, along with some of these other ones, I kind of want to do a video where I'm tidying them up a little bit as best I can, restoring them if you will, because I like watching those videos and I like having my things tidy and clean. So expect to see the Glover cartridge return in a follow-up video. Next is, let's go with another one that you might not have heard about. This is Gauntlet Legends, which is a 1 to 4 player cooperative hack and slash RPG adventure, which I think is very ambitious for the Nintendo 64 to have 4-player co-op on one screen. It's a lot like Diablo from what I've seen, and you can save your character's progress to the save pack in each controller. And as you can see, this particular cartridge has seen better days. It's a bit scratched, a bit dirty, and I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but there's a bit of rust on the inside here, and I'm not real big on putting a rusty game into my 64. So this is another one that I'm probably going to clean up, and I actually bought this F1 World Grand Prix case to try and transplant into Gauntlet Legends into. So my plan for this is to take the chip out from Gauntlet Legends, wash and buff off all the rust, take the chip and the front of F1 Grand Prix, remove the sticker. The back is unfortunately a bit messed up, so I've got another donor for the back for Gauntlet Legends. Then I'm going to try and print a reproduction label for Gauntlet Legends and just have a nice restored copy of Gauntlet Legends. Apparently this is not a very good game because I got it for like pocket change, and it'll be a very nice donor case for Gauntlet Legends. So we'll do that in the cleaning video as well. We'll see how that turns out. Next, let me introduce you to probably one of the contenders for best 3D platformer on the Nintendo 64. And I'm saying this unironically, it's Toy Story 2. If you've never played Toy Story 2 for the Nintendo 64 or the PlayStation 1, I highly recommend you acquire yourself a copy and have a good time with it, because it's very similar to Super Mario 64 in that each level has various objectives for you to complete to attain Pizza Planet tokens. And honestly, just a lot of the objectives are very fun. Playing as Buzz is very fun. The music on the PlayStation 1 version is much better than the 64 version. But I grew up playing this one. My cousins had this, and I would borrow it occasionally. But I never finished it because you need the save pack to save. And I didn't have one, so every time I played it, I had to start from the start. But yeah, unironically, I love this game, and I'm considering streaming it. Because it's just a really fun time, honestly. Like, I'm not even that huge on Toy Story 2, but it's really good fun. Like, the first level is Andy's house, and there's like a robot. And I remember there's this level where it's raining and you're in an alley, and you gotta fight like this big slime thing, I think. And just like, I was getting major nostalgia waves, like rippling through me, replaying the first couple of levels. And my favourite level was always there's a toy store where you can like muck around with all the toys on the shelves, and like gumball dispensers at the front. Yeah, I don't know, it's just such a good time. Highly recommend playing this or watching me play it on twitch.tv/MrMcFly. But yeah, I'm really keen to play that. Next is one you probably have heard of. It's not too unfamiliar, not too indie. It's Doom 64. Doom, of course, is like a world-renowned first-person shooter. But I was playing Doom 1 and 2 when I was like 4 or 5 on my dad's computer, and it never really scared me. I never really thought of it as like a horror first-person shooter. And then I played Doom 64, and it always gave me the heebie-jeebies and gave me a really disturbing feeling, like to my core, because I don't know, the atmosphere, the designs of the monsters, the redesigns of the monsters, I should say, the almost lack of music, but just like deep ambient tones, always really creep me out. This is the only Doom game, apart from Doom 3. This is one of 2 Doom games that I'm actually quite creeped out by. And it's also just a really good time. It feels very solid. And they're actually launching a port of it on the Switch before Doom Eternal comes out, I think. So hopefully they update the controls a bit in it, because the controls are probably like the worst part about this game. But other than that, solid game, solid shooter. Super shotguns in it, so that's always a plus. And I never did finish this one, so it'll be interesting to go through that and finish it off. Speaking of id Software and first-person shooters, I also picked up a game that I'm not too familiar with myself, called Hexen. Hexen is a first-person fantasy shooter, if that makes sense. So you don't have guns so much as you have fists to brawl with and wands to send spells toward your enemies with. And honestly, I'm not too sure of the story. It's very classic 90s, you know, the wizard has sealed the gates and all this stuff. But I've played a bit of it. I played as the brawler, so your main weapon is these iron knuckles. And I literally just walk around like punching people. And you can throw like molotovs, but I think they call them flechettes. Not really sure how to pronounce it. But what I like about Hexen 64 is that it has slightly destructible environments. So in the first level, for example, there's this church and it has stained glass windows. And I was like, you know what, I wonder if I can shoot these. And it's an id Software game, so of course there's secrets behind the destructible stained glass windows. But I just thought that was like very interesting, because it's not really something that Doom ever did, that I can remember. Doom had a lot of walking through walls and, you know, secret doors but I don't remember ever like destroying the environment to open up new paths. And I just thought that was really cool. And there's actually like 3 classes that you can play as in Hexen, who each specialize in one of, magic or fist fighting, like melee, and the other one I think is a mix of both. But yeah, I think this is very interesting, worth checking out. It's definitely not as popular as Doom, but I actually had a really good time with the couple of levels that I played, so I'm looking forward to playing some more. Next is one that you're probably familiar with, I think it's pretty popular, is Yoshi's Story. So I used to borrow this off my sister's friend all the time. I thought it was a great 2D platformer. Very fun time. You play as a range of different coloured Yoshis, and your goal is to collect as much fruit in every level as you can while heading towards the goal. And there's, egg throwing, Shy Guys to defeat. I think there's a couple of Poochie levels. I think it's a bit easier than Yoshi's Island, and probably not as highly rated or as good as Yoshi's Island, but I always still had a really good time with Yoshi's Story. I don't remember if I ever finished it, but that's about to change. I will go through this and enjoy it now that I've got my own copy. Yeah, and it's just like, it's nice to have that nostalgia back for early, simpler times, like my childhood, and to complete a bunch of games that I never saw the end of, but to also have this handcrafted collection of games that might not be like IGN's top 10 games of 1995 or whatever, but Glover's cool. He tried to do something unique, so that's why I picked a lot of these games. And that's why actually I picked this one, which I think is pretty unknown, called Rocket Robot on Wheels. Rocket is another 3D platformer collectathon akin to Mario and Banjo, where you play as Rocket, a robot on wheels, and you work at a theme park, and one of the inhabitants of the theme park is sick of one of the other inhabitants always being the star of the show, so he starts taking over. I think it's a walrus. But each level is like a different land in the theme park, so it's different themed. And you collect tickets for completing various objectives, so akin to the Mario Power Stars and the Banjo Jiggies. And yeah, Nitro Rat also did a video on this one, kind of sold me on this game as well. I think it's similar to Glover in that it's a little bit clunky, it's a little bit different here and there, but out of probably all the new 3D platformers I have, apart from Toy Story 2, I'm most interested in getting stuck into Rocket Robot on Wheels. I think that'll be a good time. And lastly, the last Nintendo 64 game that I collected, that I added to my collection over 10-15 years since the last time I got a Nintendo 64 game, is Mario Party 2. I had the first Mario Party, and I spent a lot of time playing that with my sisters. We only had 2 controllers, so we couldn't all play at the same time. But we had a good time with it. Thinking back now, I kind of hate Mario Party because of how random, I guess, it can be. But I guess that's kind of the game, right? So I can't be too mad at it. I'd only ever played Mario Party 2 at my dentist as a kid growing up. they had a Nintendo 64 in the waiting room, and they had a copy of Pod Racer, Episode 1 Pod Racer, and Mario Party 2. And some little jerk had changed the language on Mario Party 2 to Spanish. And since I wasn't that familiar with the game, I could never find out how to change it back. So, thanks for ruining my childhood, random dentist patient. But, no, I have played a bit of this. It's nice to have fresh mini-games. It's nice to have no mini-games where you need to spin the joystick and burn a hole in your hand and ruin the joystick on the controller. And I think the costumes and the new boards are very interesting as well. So yeah, I tried not to buy too many multiplayer 64 games because I just don't think that I'll ever convince anyone to play the Nintendo 64 with me. So you'll notice that like a lot of the other ones were single player. But I find that Mario Party can still be a good time playing against CPUs. So, and you know, if I ever have all the family together and I've got new controllers now, we can have some 3 to 4 player Mario Party fun. So that wraps up my Nintendo 64 haul. That collecting over the past couple of months was very interesting. I learned a lot about a lot of games that were on the 64 that I never knew about. I sort of doubled my Nintendo 64 collection. I always remembered my collection as being like huge, like so many games to play. And then I went back after ordering all these, and I was like, oh, I have a very limited scope of games here. Let's change that. And now I have a very wide variety of interesting games to play. So there's a stack of games this tall on my desk, off camera here that you guys can't see, for a handful of different consoles. And I think you'll be very interested to see what else I've been picking up over the last few months. But that's a story for another time. I'd like to thank you for joining me for another show and tell video, and I hope to see you next time.